name's Jason Fried. I'm the CEO at Basecamp, and we're a company based in Chicago, although we have we have employees in about 35 different cities around the world. It's very important to us for a couple reasons. I'll give you the perspective of the employer, me, and then also the employee. So for the employer, for me, it means that I can hire anybody anywhere in the world. There's great people all over the place. The idea that great people only live within 30 miles of your office or kilometers of your office, like that's just a silly notion. I think there's wonderful people all over the world, and we have people in the US, in a bunch of different states, Canada, Europe, 2 people in Australia now, someone in Hong Kong, and they're all wonderful people. And to think that I couldn't have hired them because they didn't live near me is sort of, to me, a silly idea. So for an employer, it's great because I get to get the pick of the world, basically. I also don't have to fight the talent wars in the same way that a lot of companies that are, let's say you live in Silicon Valley and your company's in Silicon Valley and you have to be at Silicon Valley and everyone's fighting for the same people. It's just a crazy war. You don't have to fight that war. There's great people all over the place, right? So for me as an employer, that's great. As an employee, it's wonderful because you're not locked to your company. People, for example, Kristen, who runs our customer service group at our company, Basecamp, she started out in Chicago, but then her and her boyfriend wanted to move to Portland, Oregon, and normally that would mean that she would lose her job. Like that's normally what would happen. But for us, like we didn't lose her, and she didn't lose her job, and it's just like, of course, go to Portland. If you want to be in Portland, go to Portland. Like great, and we still get to work together, and everything's great. So for employees, they don't have to make a choice between life and work. Work can continue wherever they want to live their life. And so I think for me, for finding great talent, for employees for being able to move around, and also for me for not having to lose people if they want to move around in their life, it's a wonderful benefit. It's easier to do this from the beginning. So we've been remote like from our 4th employee or something like that, right? It's a lot harder to do if you have 50 local people and you want to hire your first remote. So I think this is really something small businesses and new startups and entrepreneurs should be thinking about right from the start. My business partner and I, David Hanmeyer Hansen, he lived in Denmark and we started working together. So he was like 6 or 7 hours apart. We didn't see each other for I think a couple years or something like that, and we just kind of, it doesn't matter, who cares? So wherever people want to be is fine. Hiring is a little bit more challenging in that you want to make sure you can find people who are comfortable working this way, because it is not for everybody. Just like working in an office isn't for everybody, right? So it's just everyone has different sort of interests in how they want to work. Some people who are extremely extroverted and love to be around coworkers and they're probably not necessarily the best fit in every case for remote work, although we still have some that are really extroverted and love remote work. But you just got to find out about what drives people and if people can be comfortable working that way, and if they're really good sort of individually motivated people who aren't going to have a bunch of people around them physically to sort of keep them interested in the work. So you just got to pay a little bit more attention to some things like that. And then sometimes it's frustrating because you just want to just gather everybody in a room and talk, but that should be happening extremely rarely anyway. And so what we do is twice a year we fly everybody into Chicago for a week. So we do these twice a year meetups for 1 week each. And then we get we want to bring everyone together in a room out, basically. And that's fine, twice a year is fine for that. And in the meantime, we can use video if we need to, or we can just write stuff up in Basecamp if we have to, or we can hop on the phone if we have to. There's a lot, or you can fly someone in on a plane if you have to. Like an airplane is a wonderful productivity tool as well. Like if you need to get someone to Chicago, or if I need to go somewhere, like hop on a plane for a few $100 and get there, and that's fine. So there are some challenges. But there's plenty of challenges in offices as well. They're just slightly different challenges. And then as I mentioned, I think that changing from a local culture to a remote culture is challenging the more people you have in the organization, because like our company, we have 14 people who live in Chicago and the rest live in about 30 different cities around the world. But even the people in Chicago only come into the office a few days a week. So everybody, even if they're local, still works as if they're remote. And so we know how to do that. But if you have 50 people in an office and you want to hire your first remote employee or second remote employee, it's going to be very hard to do that because there's going to be this really strong local culture and then these 2 stragglers that are out there. And that's just really hard to do. So I would encourage people there's a few ways you can handle this. One way is you can just start remote from the beginning if you're able to, if it's still early stage enough for you. But the other thing you can do is you can begin to encourage people who work locally to work from home a few days a week and act as if they're remote. And that way, if you hire 2 more people or something who are remote, maybe half the company can act remote, even though they're still in the same local area, but they can work at home or they can work at co-working spaces and just sort of simulate remote working so everyone starts to get used to that. I love the idea of working from somewhere else for a while, and actually I'm going to do this next week. So my wife and I and our kid, we're going to go live in LA for a month, next month actually. And so like I'm looking forward to doing that myself, like at least once a month a year, and I encourage other people to do it. We've had some employees who've been very nomadic. They actually, this one woman who doesn't work for us anymore, but she was on our customer service team. She lived in an Airstream with her family and just drove around the United States. And we had another guy we have a guy still who has an Airstream who kind of takes longer vacations occasionally. Another person lived in an RV traveling around the country for a little bit. So we have people who've done that, and I think it's wonderful and they really enjoyed it. I think it's nice to break up. The workcation is a good idea because I think it helps break up the monotony. And you just get to be exposed to a new place and a new setting. I think that's always healthy, basically. I think the tricky thing is, as we've been noticing this, is that we have more and more people with kids now who work for us. And so the nomadic lifestyle is easier for younger people who aren't attached, basically. But once you're sort of married or if you have kids, it becomes a lot more difficult to do. So one of the things that we do is, this is not a workcation, but it's actually a vacation where we pay for people's vacations. So we come up with a list every year of about 16 different really amazing trips people can take around the world, either like to Morocco or to Paris, or you can take a train across Canada or a Grand Canyon or whatever it is, or Tokyo. And we'll pay for that vacation for you and your family. It's not a work thing though, but it is like, go somewhere interesting in the world for 4 or 5 days. I know you can't stay away for 3 weeks because you've got kids, but like, take a vacation. We want to encourage you to go somewhere really great. So even though it's not work, work is helping it happen. So I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff as well. I think the hardest thing about like workcation style things is that if you're going somewhere really interesting, you want to explore it. Like, you naturally want to explore it, but you're supposed to be working. And so I don't really know the best way to handle that. It's more about like discipline, and I think a big part of it is probably it's better if you're around other people who are also working on this workcation at the same time. Otherwise, it's really tempting just if you're on your own to just like go check out the sites, right? But if everyone's sort of be working together and you can sort of establish this thing that like, as a group from 9 to 5 or something, we're gonna work together in a place and then we're gonna have fun later on. Like, that's a nice way of doing this. I think the camaraderie of other people going through the same experience will help you stay motivated, or help you stay disciplined, I should say. I hope more and more employees get a chance to work remotely. I don't think it's ever going to be 100%, nor does it make sense to. I mean, we're lucky in our industry that you can do most of your work through a keyboard or through a computer or through a mobile device. But of course, if you work in a restaurant or retail, you have to be physically in the place. But information work, I hope more and more of it can happen remotely, and more people get a shot to do that. Because I think it's really, really a wonderful way to work. And I think you can get a lot of work done in a short period of time when you don't have the standard distractions that happen at an office. And that's my biggest concern with the future of work, which is that I think the current trajectory of work is that people have to put in more and more and more hours because there's more and more distractions throughout the day, especially notifications, especially everything going real time. It's extremely distracting, and people have to then carve out time from their lives to actually get these uninterrupted stretches of time to do work, and it doesn't make any sense to me. So I hope that while the current trend is a lot of sort of real-time stuff, I think it's going to swing around. There'll be some real-time stuff. Real-time is valuable for sure, but it doesn't make sense for most things. That more people will get into more asynchronous communication, where they're able to respond to people on their own time and not on the person's time who asked them the question. So I'm hopeful that becomes a more sort of enlightened way to work down the road, and we're trying to lead the charge on that. If you want to test out remote working, instead of hiring a remote worker, I would suggest like 1 day a month, like the third Thursday of the month or something like this. So everyone works from home. The whole company just work from home. And just start 1 day a month. 1 day out of 30 days, or out of 20 whatever work days. Like, try that. and you'll see that the world doesn't end and the company doesn't go out of business and things aren't horrible. And then you go, okay, that wasn't so bad. And actually, I bet you people say, this was actually really good. And so now you can maybe go every other week, 1 day a week, and then maybe every other week, 2 days a week, or something like that. Maybe then it's one day a week, and you can begin to sort of phase into it. And maybe it turns out that your company doesn't want to go fully remote, but maybe you're half remote now. Maybe it's like you work in the office half the time and you can work at home half the time. Like that's still progress in my opinion. So I think the only way you can get a taste for, or the only way you can figure out if this is going to work is to take a small taste, show that the world isn't going to end, that everything's going to be okay, and then kind of keep doing more and more and more until you find the right equilibrium for yourself. Because not every company is going to be fully remote, nor should they be. You know, some cultures just don't work that way, and that's fine. But certainly, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. There's lots of room in the middle. I think you can convince them on the productivity side, actually, if that's what they're really focused. If they're worried, they're like, well, how do I know people are going to be doing work if I can't see them? Well, why don't you let them try? And I think what you're going to find out is if you ask them how they felt about it, ask not the managers, the employees, how they felt about working at home 1 day a week, I would guess most people are going to feel very positive about that. And as a manager, you should want your people to feel good about what they're doing at work. And I think they're going to find that they're actually able to get more stuff done outside the office than in the office. And I think those kind of results will speak for themselves at some point, where a manager will have to pay attention, because like ultimately they want people to be productive and they want people to be happy. And these are two ways that some people may be more productive and may be happier.